Have you ever noticed how the people you call friends sometimes disappear when you need them most? Or how those same friends who laugh with you in good times suddenly grow silent in your struggles? It makes you wonder if friendship is even real anymore, or if most people just show up when it benefits them. The truth is, when you strip away the surface, you might realize that no one is truly your real friend in the way you imagine, and that's not a bad thing. It's a reality check that forces you to stop relying on illusions and start depending on what actually matters. Most friendships are built on convenience, not commitment, and this is one of the hardest truths people struggle to accept because it forces you to look at relationships without the comfort of illusion. Think about how most friendships even begin. They start because you go to the same school, you work at the same job, you live in the same neighborhood, or you both enjoy the same activity at a certain point in your life. It's not really about two people making an intentional decision to build something unshakable. It's about proximity and timing. You happen to be in the same place at the same time, and the bond was created more out of circumstance than out of choice. When life changes, when you switch schools, when you quit that job, when you move to a new city, or when you no longer share that common interest, most of those friendships slowly fade away, not because either person did something wrong, but because the friendship was built on convenience rather than a deep, committed foundation. People often mistake these situational connections for lifelong commitments, and when reality reveals itself, it hurts because you realize the connection was only strong as long as it was easy. Convenience-driven friendships are effortless when life is simple and aligned, but they rarely stand when tested by hardship. A friend who is there to hang out after work might not be there when you lose that job. A friend who is always around for laughs and good times might suddenly vanish when you're going through depression or financial struggle because those moments are no longer convenient to their lifestyle. They can't access the same joy from you, and since the relationship was built around what was easy and fun, they pull away the second it starts to feel heavy or demanding. Commitment is different. Commitment says, I'm here whether it's easy or hard, whether it benefits me or not. But commitment is rare in friendships because most people don't see you as their responsibility. They see you as their option, and the moment better options come along, they exercise that choice. Another reason friendships are often tied to convenience is because people's lives naturally shift based on seasons. Think about the friends you had as a teenager, how close they felt to you, how inseparable you thought you were, and then look at how many of them are still actively in your life today. Most of them aren't, because your lives went in different directions and the bond couldn't survive outside the shared convenience of youth. The same thing happens in adulthood. You bond with coworkers, gym partners, or fellow parents because of a shared routine. But when that routine shifts, the friendship tends to dissolve. The truth is, most people are not putting in deliberate effort to maintain those bonds beyond the season of convenience. If you look closely, the relationships that last are the ones where both people consistently choose to show up, regardless of distance, changes, or personal inconvenience. But that's the exception, not the rule. Convenience also reveals itself when you notice how friends treat your needs compared to their own. If it's easy for them to be there, they will. If it requires sacrifice, most won't. For example, they'll gladly come to your party if it means free food, fun, and a good time. But when you're in the hospital and it's a long drive, suddenly their schedule is too busy. They'll happily celebrate your promotion because it's fun to be around success. But when you're struggling with debt, they'll ghost you because that energy doesn't benefit them. Friendships built on convenience operate like a transaction. You give something that fits their life and they stay. The moment the transaction doesn't feel worth it anymore, they move on. This doesn't mean every person is fake or that people intentionally hurt you. It just means human nature tends to choose what's easy over what's hard, and most people are not wired to invest in relationships that require consistent sacrifice. That's why so many friendships feel strong in the moment but disappear when tested. They were never built on the kind of commitment that says, I'm here no matter what. They were built on the kind of convenience that says, I'm here as long as this works for me. And the moment it doesn't, the truth becomes clear. People care more about themselves than your problems, and that is not necessarily because people are cruel or heartless. It is because human beings are wired to survive, to prioritize their own struggles, and to focus on the issues that directly impact their lives. When you really think about it, the majority of people you know are fighting silent battles of their own, battles that drain their energy, their patience, and their capacity to take on anything extra. So when you come to them with your pain, your stress, or your setbacks, their first instinct is to measure it against their own circumstances and decide whether they have the energy to carry it with you. If they feel like they don't, they will nod, give you a quick word of comfort, and then move back to focusing on themselves. It doesn't mean they hate you. It means your problems are not their priority, and most people are not built to carry burdens that don't belong to them. When you share your struggles with someone, notice how quickly the conversation shifts back to them. You might be talking about how overwhelmed you feel, and suddenly they jump in with how tired they are, how busy their life is, how stressed they've been lately. Instead of sitting with your pain, they compare it to their own. It's not because they want to dismiss you. It's because people instinctively filter everything through the lens of self. They are listening, but they are listening with the thought of how it relates to them, how it makes them feel, or how it fits into their world. That is why so many times you walk away from opening up to someone and feel more alone than before, because what you needed was empathy, but what you got was comparison. Another sign of this truth is how quickly people forget your problems when they stop affecting them. You might pour your heart out about a crisis you're facing, and the next time you see that person, they don't even ask how you're doing. Why? Because once you walked away, your crisis went back into the background of their life. Their world didn't stop for you, it kept going, and in their world, they are the main character. Your pain is a side plot at best, and if it doesn't demand their attention, it gets pushed aside. This is why people can tell you, I'm here for you, and mean it in the moment. But when the weight of your situation lingers longer than they expected, they quietly pull back because being there for you starts to interfere with being there for themselves. It's also why many friendships feel so one-sided. You may find yourself constantly showing up for people, constantly listening to their struggles, constantly giving them advice and encouragement. But when it's your turn, the room suddenly gets quiet. That's because while you're making space for their problems, they're not willing to shrink their own world to make space for yours. People like having someone to lean on, but very few like being leaned on too heavily. When your needs start to challenge their comfort, their time, or their peace, you will quickly see how much more they care about protecting their own world than carrying yours. This doesn't mean no one cares about you at all. It means the depth of care people give is usually limited by how much it disrupts their own lives. True empathy, the kind where someone takes your burden as if it were their own, is extremely rare because it requires sacrifice, it requires discomfort, and it requires energy most people would rather save for themselves. People want to appear caring, they want to say the right words, but when caring turns into action that costs them something, they often retreat. That is why when you really need someone, you realize how small your circle actually is. Most of the people you thought were close are only close when it's convenient, and when your problems demand more than their attention, they choose themselves. Loyalty often fades when you're no longer useful. And this is one of the hardest realities to accept because it forces you to see that many of the people you once thought were loyal to you were actually loyal to what you gave them, what you represented in their life, or how much you contributed to their comfort. As long as you were meeting a need, whether it was emotional, financial, social, or even just providing entertainment and companionship, their loyalty seemed unshakable. They stood by you, praised you, and acted as if nothing could break the bond. But the moment you stopped being useful, the cracks began to show. The calls became less frequent. The energy in the relationship shifted, and the loyalty that felt so strong began to fade, not because you changed as a person, but because the benefit you once provided no longer existed. It becomes obvious when you pay attention to how people treat you in seasons of abundance versus seasons of struggle. When you have resources, connections, influence, or energy to give, many people will orbit around you because you make their life easier. They will disguise it as loyalty, but it's really dependency masked as friendship. The moment your situation changes, when you can no longer provide what they once received from you, their presence starts to disappear. You learn quickly that their loyalty was never about you, it was about the access you gave them. If they can no longer gain from you, their commitment fades because their version of loyalty was transactional from the beginning. You can see this play out in small ways too. Think about the friend who is always around when you're the one driving, paying, or planning, but suddenly goes missing when you stop doing those things. Or the colleague who treats you like family when you can help them advance, but becomes distant the moment you're no longer in a position of influence. These moments sting because they reveal the truth. Loyalty tied to usefulness is not loyalty at all. It's convenience disguised as devotion. Many people want the benefits of a loyal friend without carrying the responsibility of being one themselves. The fading of loyalty also happens when your struggles require more than people are willing to give. When life is good, people find it easy to claim they are loyal to you. But when your problems start demanding time, patience, or emotional support, you find out how shallow that loyalty really is. Some people don't want to stand with you in the fire, they only want to celebrate you once you've walked out of it. And when you realize that, it forces you to stop confusing temporary alignment with permanent loyalty. The people who are loyal only when it costs them nothing were never loyal to you. They were loyal to the role you played in their life. This truth also explains why some relationships shift the moment you set boundaries. When you stop giving as much, when you stop saying yes to everything, when you no longer bend over backward to meet someone else's needs, their so-called loyalty weakens. Suddenly, they label you as selfish or distant because they can no longer use you the way they once did. That is not the reaction of someone who was loyal to you. That is the reaction of someone who was loyal to what you provided. Real loyalty doesn't vanish the moment your usefulness changes. It doesn't retreat when the benefits stop flowing, and it doesn't dissolve when your life hits hard times. What most people call loyalty is just an unspoken agreement that lasts only as long as you are beneficial to them, and when that usefulness ends, so does the bond they claimed would never break. True support is rare and usually conditional, and that is why so many people are shocked when they realize how few actually stand beside them when life takes a hard turn. In good times, it seems like support is everywhere. You have people cheering for you, clapping for your achievements, and showing up when there is something to celebrate. But when the excitement fades and life places you in situations that are messy, painful, or complicated, the number of people willing to stand with you drops dramatically. Most people want to be around when it feels good, when it looks good, and when there is something in it for them. But when support requires sacrifice, discomfort, or risk, they quietly pull back and distance themselves. That is why the phrase true support is rare carries so much weight, because it means very few people are willing to love you when there is nothing beautiful to gain from it. Support becomes conditional when it depends on how your situation affects another person's comfort. If your problems don't demand much, people will stay around, offering words, small gestures, or presence because it doesn't cost them much. But the moment your pain stretches beyond their patience, the moment it starts requiring consistent time, emotional energy, or even financial help, their willingness begins to fade. The support that felt strong in the beginning reveals its limits because it was never unconditional. It was based on convenience. Someone may stand with you through a short struggle, but if your struggle lingers too long, if it tests their endurance, they begin to drift away. You see it in how friends stop checking in as often, how they change the subject when you bring up your hardships, or how they eventually disappear altogether when your season of difficulty doesn't end as quickly as they hoped. This conditional nature of support also shows in how people respond, depending on what others might think. Some will stand by you as long as it doesn't damage their own reputation, their social standing, or their opportunities. The second they feel like your crisis could make them look bad or cost them something in their own life, their support disappears. They care about you privately, but not publicly. They want to be seen with you when you are thriving, but not when you are falling apart. This reveals that their support was more about appearances than about genuine care. And once again, you realize how rare true support actually is. It also becomes clear when you face situations that don't have a quick fix. People love to give advice. They love to throw out easy solutions because that makes them feel helpful without actually requiring much from them. But when your reality is more complicated than a simple solution, when your problem doesn't go away overnight, people get frustrated. They don't want to keep hearing about it. They don't want to keep showing up, and they don't want to carry the weight of it with you. That is because their support was conditional from the beginning, meant only for the short term, not the long haul. True support, the kind that stands with you regardless of outcome, is rare because it requires a level of selflessness most people are not willing to give. It demands patience, consistency, and sacrifice, and many people are unwilling to let your struggle interrupt their comfort. They want to be the friend who shows up in theory, but not in practice, because practice means carrying weight they do not want to carry. This is why so many people feel abandoned in their darkest hours. It is not that no one cares at all, it is that very few are capable of offering the kind of unconditional support that does not have limits or conditions attached to it. When you face those moments and realize how many people distance themselves instead of drawing closer, it forces you to see that true support is not common. It is something rare, fragile, and often conditional in ways you never expected. Real strength comes when you stop expecting others to fill that role, because the more you rely on people to show up for you in ways they cannot, the more disappointed and drained you become. Life teaches you that waiting for someone else to rescue you, validate you, or complete you is the fastest way to stay stuck in cycles of frustration. The truth is, no one will ever understand your pain the way you do. No one will ever carry your burdens with the same weight you feel them, and no one will ever prioritize your healing above their own. The moment you stop placing unrealistic expectations on others and turn that energy inward is the moment you begin to unlock a strength that is not dependent on who stays or who leaves. When you stop expecting people to be your constant source of comfort or support, you take back the power you once gave away. You stop being controlled by the presence or absence of others, and you start learning how to stabilize yourself regardless of who is in your corner. It does not mean you reject people or isolate yourself. It means you finally understand that leaning too heavily on others for your peace, joy, or security is building your life on shaky ground. People are unpredictable. They change, they leave, they disappoint. But when you begin to ground yourself in your own resilience, you are no longer broken by their absence. You may still feel the sting of loss, but you do not collapse because your strength does not rely on them. This kind of strength grows slowly, usually through pain. Every disappointment, every betrayal, every moment where someone failed to show up in the way you hoped becomes a lesson. At first it hurts, but eventually it teaches you to stop looking outward for stability and start building it within yourself. You begin to recognize that your confidence, your healing, and your growth cannot be outsourced to anyone else. If you want peace, you learn to create it. If you want progress, you learn to push yourself forward. If you want resilience, you learn to fall and stand back up without waiting for someone else to pick you up. Real strength is not about never needing anyone. It is about not being destroyed when the people you thought you needed are no longer there. Another layer of this strength is learning to set boundaries without guilt. When you stop expecting others to fill the role of savior or constant companion, you also stop bending over backwards to please them just so they might stay. You no longer sacrifice your own well-being in exchange for temporary approval because you understand that your survival and growth depend on you, not on keeping others happy. This shift allows you to see relationships for what they are, not for what you wish they would be. Instead of demanding that someone prove their loyalty endlessly, you observe their actions and accept the truth without forcing it. That acceptance is powerful because it frees you from the endless cycle of disappointment that comes from expecting too much. Real strength also looks like embracing solitude without fear. Many people confuse being alone with being weak, but it is often in those quiet moments that you discover just how capable you are. When no one is there to clap for you, when no one is there to comfort you, when no one is there to remind you of your worth, you are forced to become the one who gives yourself what you need. And once you learn how to do that, once you experience that kind of self-reliance, you no longer feel desperate for validation from anyone else. You become more selective with the people you allow close to you because you are no longer operating from a place of need, but from a place of strength. This strength transforms how you see relationships. Instead of clinging to people out of fear of being alone, you begin to enjoy them for what they are without losing yourself if they leave. Instead of expecting others to fix your problems, you take ownership of solving them while still appreciating genuine support when it comes. And instead of letting the inconsistency of others shake you, you stay grounded in your own consistency. That shift is where true power lies, in the ability to walk forward with or without applause, with or without company, knowing that the foundation you stand on is one you built for yourself.